Hey folks, Paul Spain here. Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. We are live today via Facebook, Periscope and YouTube. And of course, we will be available in an audio format as always for those that listen to audio podcasts to listen in the usual form through all of your favorite podcasts apps such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and even Spotify these days. So plenty of places you can find us. But thank you very much for joining us, especially to those who will be coming in or are coming into to our live stream channels. Now, today, very pleased to be able to bring Stephen Phillips from Sumo Logic in to join me on the show. Welcome along, Stephen. How are you doing during this COVID-19 crisis?
We're working from home, can't go out and visit customers, can't go to cafes, any of that stuff, but it's pretty much business as usual for us.
Well, I guess like a lot of tech companies, and your Sumo Logic's headquartered out of Silicon Valley, of course, and your New Zealand operations, tend to run from home anyway, right? You work remotely, and most of your team is spread out around the world and in Silicon Valley.
Certainly across New Zealand, Australia, sort of India, Singapore, all those types of things. Most people work from home. We do use a little bit of the likes of WeWork, Regus, those types of things, but mostly out of homes.
Yep. All right, now, look, let's jump in. There's a whole lot to talk about today, and I probably wasn't expecting that, actually. It seems like we're not seeing a whole lot of products announced and released during this period, but there are lots of things going on. And if we get time, I'm going to open, and our live stream video viewers may be able to see this box that I'm holding up. It's a product that I looked at prior to it being unveiled to the general public. It's the Samsung Z Flip, or Z Flip as they call it in the US. And one of those just happened to arrive today. Their, final production unit of the Z Flip. So actually, I might just open that now while we're talking about one or two other bits and pieces. And can give my impressions on the final product if I can get into the box. Now, look, the first sort of key item of news that we have. There's actually, I guess, there's a few things to talk about, but the first one I did want to talk about is the 5G auction here in New Zealand. Now, this is something that we've been looking forward to. I remember being on TV3, probably going back about a year ago. Jacinda was on before me, and then I went on and was talking about, well, hey, New Zealand doesn't want to be at the back end of this. We want to be at the forefront, as we have with getting our other infrastructure together in New Zealand, particularly the ultra-fast broadband. And it makes sense for us to be moving on 5G. I think that's more clear now than ever because of all those people that are constrained by the bandwidth, challenges that exist for those who are on fixed wireless connections, whether out in rural locations or in the cities. But the news has come through that from the Ministry of Business Innovation, they are saying that it has been delayed. So what that effectively means is we don't quite know how the picture looks in terms of moving things forward. And of course, there are some commercial realities here as well, aren't there, Stephen? And I saw the commentary coming through from Vodafone and Spark was that their 5G rollouts are effectively on hold at this stage. Now, I think that is primarily from what I've read into it, and I've spoken to the CEOs of both Spark and Vodafone over the last couple of weeks on the New Zealand Business Podcast, and fascinating, learning some of the insights in terms of what's going on inside those telcos. Also, Vocus, of course, who we had on as well. But yeah, realistically, under this lockdown, they are a little bit limited, and they've got to be very cautious about health and safety for their folks. And look, they can't get on with it's not quite business as usual, even for our telcos. Stephen, what are your thoughts on how important 5G is to New Zealand's future?
Yeah, I think it's a key enabler for a lot of the next generation services. Certainly, anything that's involving autonomy and the likes is going to be very dependent on that. Even if it's actually in workplaces and all for managing logistics, supply chains and the likes. But I think the challenge you've got at the moment is the returns that the telcos are going to see on those 5G type projects. If their capital programs basically are on hold at the moment, the telcos are going to want to actually delay basically the rollout of that until they might be able to capture those revenues.
Yeah, look, I think that is going to be part of the challenge. And look, alongside that, we just saw in the last few minutes actually, while we've been chatting prior to the show, a release of information through from 2 Degrees. They say they're reviewing their costs, projects, and staffing levels in response to COVID-19, and this is not looking ideal, I've got to say. Must be really worrying for their people. So they're talking about laying off 10% of their 1,200 person workforce, who of course is spread in different parts of the country. Although predominantly in Auckland and in Christchurch in terms of the operations that I've interacted with and have come across. Of course, they've got their retail stores which are closed at the moment, but they've also highlighted that part of their response also includes reduction in capital spend, deferral of non-essential projects, reducing operating costs, including recruitment freeze, renegotiating rates with suppliers, really working to bring down, I guess, costs across the board, including a reference to acceleration of cost-saving initiatives that were scheduled or lined up for 2021. So yeah, that's, I guess, just the reality of the current times, isn't it? That although probably from the outside it looks as though telcos should be making more money than ever, it's not quite as simple as that, is it? And I'm sure it must be some challenging times, because no business wants to be laying off their most important asset, which ultimately is their people. And 2 Degrees have made a comment along those lines, but obviously the pressures on them are very real.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of pressure on the back end at the moment in terms of engineering, trying to run the networks and all that capacity, and they'll certainly be experiencing additional operational costs sort of at this stage, more overtime for engineering and those types of things for provisioning and the likes. But at the same time, at the retail end, they can't sort of bring on board the new handsets that they handle via the retail. So that's going to be pushed basically to online fulfillment. So yeah. I can see why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and look, it's not obviously not just 2 Degrees that are under pressure. It was I guess a little bit of a surprise today. I think it probably will be. Every bit of news that we hear about an organisation being impacted in some way, but particularly those being hit in a bigger way. And fast food outlet Burger King was mentioned as having moved into receivership. We've heard of organisations such as the Auckland Council and Fletcher's, dumping of contractors. So there is really a huge amount of pressure. What are your thoughts on what the opportunity here is, though? I think technology brings with it all sorts of opportunities to help organizations to be more efficient and more effective, obviously to improve things like customer service and satisfaction levels. There really are all sorts of ways that that technology is being or able to be utilized, and that this to me seems like really as good a time as there ever was to be looking at and investing in technology, obviously in a level of balance, but it's something I think we should be looking at the positive opportunities to really utilize the technology, right?
Yeah, certainly. I'm in the game, obviously, of analytic insights from how businesses sort of conduct themselves sort of in this digital world, and we're certainly seeing no reduction in the data that people are sending us, and a lot of organisations, foodstuffs, for instance, they're running 200-300% sort of at the moment in terms of their business, their digital online sort of shopping is going absolutely gangbusters, right to capacity as much as they can, and the more insights into organisations that are doing business at the moment that we can provide, the more they can actually optimise basically that value. And at the same time, organisations removing remotely have different sort of security postures. There's additional sort of risk factors they need to look at, and we might be able to drop into some of that a little bit later in the episode.
Okay. Yep. No, that's good. That's appreciated. Yeah. Look, I mean, it is challenging because when there is that need to look at every dollar, and there are certainly firms in some pretty challenging situations, and I guess the Burger King example and others organisations that are really at that point of hitting the wall. Well, there's only so much you can do, right? So really tough times, and certainly I think our thoughts are there with, well, how do we help New Zealand succeed and go forward? And it still is very, very early days. So we'll keep those conversations going. But for those that are interested in delving into them a bit more, then take a look across or listen across to our New Zealand Business Podcast episodes. We've got chat coming up with Rod Drury over the next few days, and we've obviously got those other ones that I've mentioned, and a few other episodes coming live online for the New Zealand Business Podcast. So those are well worth a look. Now, delving into how some organisations are, I guess, rethinking, dealing with some of the challenges. Stephen, you mentioned foodstuffs. Now, I saw a friend of mine who runs business Satellite in Auckland. They've been working with foodstuffs. They have some event management software, which is I think probably what they've put into use with foodstuffs, and they've been trialing a text queuing service, which seemed to me like a really smart idea to get into play, and something that we haven't generally needed in New Zealand supermarkets up until now. So I was able to try it out, because there's a supermarket pretty close to me that sort of I technically maybe was slightly further than a couple of the other supermarkets, but I didn't think I was putting anybody at risk by going and testing out this text queuing service. Now, the day I tried it was over the Easter weekend. Went in there on the Saturday, and it seemed like it wasn't obvious at first, but in the end, it became obvious that lots of people were either, and it may have been a combination of the two, were either flocking to that store because of their text queuing service, meaning you basically didn't have to stand in a queue for an hour or two, and you could go and sit in your car and watch Netflix or what have you, or it was just with people wanting to stock up before Easter Sunday. And but anyway, I think it was about over 2.5 hours before I got the text back to say I was my place in the queue had come up, and then I had 10 minutes to get into the store from that point in time. So yeah, it was rather interesting to try it out. Probably not the best time to try it out, but I did spend 90 minutes sitting watching Netflix in the Tesla and taking advantage of their free streaming over the mobile network. So thank you, Elon Musk, for supporting my entertainment habits there. But look, good on Foodstuffs and Satellite to be trying that out. And look, I hope it works well. There's certainly a few more things they could do. For instance, letting you know where you are in the queue and maybe an estimate of how long the queue is. I understand there was maybe a screen up somewhere, although I didn't see it, that gave an estimate of the queue. But I didn't know, and I actually gave up after about an hour and a half of Netflix. Was kind of I was at my limit, and I headed home. But yeah, good to see these sorts of initiatives being tried, and I see even the online shopping services that are out there from the likes of Foodstuffs and others are getting looked at closely. Foodstuffs have it seems adjusted how they kind of open up their places in their queue for booking food deliveries. And so last night I logged in. What was it? I went to their website just after 6 p.m. And at 6 p.m. it appeared they had probably opened up a window for deliveries the following Monday in that 6 to 8 p.m. or 6 to 9 p.m. Window. And whereas every other time I'd gone in and had a look, I hadn't been able to see an opportunity. And possibly that was that they were opening up, their list maybe at 12 a.m. or 12:01 a.m. or something, and then if you happen to be online at that time, you maybe had a very good chance of being able to book in a little bit of a slot. Stephen, how have you gone with online groceries, or have you been standing in the queue? What's your favourite approach?
Well, I'd been holding off from actually doing the online stuff for a long time, but this is kind of like forced the hand a little bit. So I've had two deliveries and all now, and it's been rather successful. It's about a 10-minute sort of cycle. They you open up the back of your car, basically you lift the bags in, and you're all done. It was pretty quick and convenient. And I've didn't have quite as good as an experience in some of the fresh produce. So I worked with another company I won't name because they're a small family-owned sort of business. But once the delivery of the produce was really great, the quality was really great. But some of the back-end technology processes let them down, and they just don't have the opportunity at the moment with how busy they are to actually address some of those.
Right. Yes. I guess sometimes some of these kind of almost minimum viable product type approaches that some organisations would take to their technology comes under some pressure. And I mean you could sort of maybe even talk about Zoom being in that from a cybersecurity aspect. And actually I see one of the comments that came up in the social feed is how the cybersecurity issues are a concern, or cybersecurity is suffering at the moment. So something to be aware of is that if your organisation is pulling bits and pieces and software together to try and address particular needs at this time, be a little bit wise on that cybersecurity front. Stephen, I think what you mentioned to me previously was the particular provider you were dealing with. They ended up auto charging your credit card. Was it 2 or 3 times in a row?
Yeah.
So that's a way to burn relationships, isn't it? If you do that sort of thing, more than once, I imagine.
Yeah, but they sorted it out pretty quickly. Literally within a day, that reversed all 2 of the 3 transactions,
Yep.
and yeah. So it was, they're doing the right thing.
Yep. Excellent. All right. So in terms of other things that are going on, we've seen Google and Apple partnering up on an approach to contact tracing, which seems to follow a similar approach to what we've seen in Singapore. But look, I think it's pretty positive seeing 2 companies that in many ways are arch rivals. Seeing them really focused on coming up with a common technology solution. And look, one of the big challenges that we have here with this concept of contact tracing is, can it possibly be delivered to enough devices and be running on enough devices to actually be useful for contact tracing? Now, the manual mechanisms they use for contact tracing, sort of, calling around and talking to the person, where have you been, who have you been in contact with, and so on. Of course, pretty time consuming, but most people have a reasonable idea of who they've interacted with. But technology could do a whole lot better if everybody was running it. And looking at Singapore, last figure I saw was they were hitting around 20% or so of their population that was running their contact tracing software. And things that I've read indicate maybe they need to really be hitting 75% or more of the population for this contact tracing technology to be particularly relevant and useful. Stephen, have you been having a little bit of a look at these contact tracing approaches?
Yeah, I'm a little bit wary of installing something that's sort of not officially sanctioned by the government. But I think
Yes.
if you look at the the combination of the data that the likes of Google would have through the use of people on maps and the likes, as well as put that together with Facebook, even without an app installed, I think they've probably got a pretty close approximation to where everybody is. But it depends on how fine a resolution you need to get, basically, with that location. If you need to get it down to 10 meters, it's a whole other story. Then you're starting to introduce sort of technologies like Bluetooth and the like. So more than sort of Wi-Fi based sort of triangulation.
Yep. Yes. Look, I mean, I think that it'll be an interesting space to follow over the next little while, and we'll keep tracking what's going on. I think that the key is that we do look at how technology can help us through this time. Now, another thing I should point out, and we're going to try and delve into this a little bit more on another episode. But the Technology Investment Network, TIN, who are well known for their annual report, which covers our New Zealand's top tech exporters. They have just released a report which is focused on health tech in New Zealand, and that delves into the different companies at different scales that are playing in the health tech phase, and they break it. They break it down into, I guess, a number of companies at all sorts of stages. There are a whole lot of entities that are sort of, early stage, or very very much in that startup stage, and then through to the bigger players. So we're going to see if we can get Greg Shanahan from Tin onto a future episode, so we can delve into a little bit of that, and particularly at the current time, of course, with the impact that COVID-19 is having. It's it'll be interesting to see what or how well New Zealand is doing at leveraging and growing into more in the health tech sector. Now, Stephen, I wanted to have a little bit of a chat around some of these things that we're up to at home in this time of COVID-19. Now, there's a new streaming platform out there. I'm not sure if they're going to be knocking over Netflix anytime soon, but Quibi has arrived. Quibi. Now, this one I think we spoke about a few weeks back, but it is here. It arrived last week, and unlike Netflix and the like, which generally these streaming platforms would launch in one country and then slowly move into other markets. Quibi basically owns all its content, from what I can tell, or they have content through partnerships. That every indicator is that it's fully global. So when I first installed it, it was onto a phone that was using the Android or Google Play Store out of the US, but it also seems to install fine locally. And Quibi, I guess, has two things that really stand out and make it quite unique in the marketplace. The first being that it's around shorter pieces of video content. So I guess consuming bigger blocks of video is maybe less common on our mobile devices. We tend to sort of snack, as it were, on smaller bite-sized chunks of video. So they've taken an approach to doing content in short episodes. So where we look at a television episode that might be, say, 20 minutes odd, or 45 minutes. Well, with Quibi, their episodes are usually in the range 5 to 10 minutes. And then the other really unique thing, and again, this leans into being a platform that's focused on mobile devices, on smartphones, is the content is designed to be just as consumable when you're holding your smartphone in a portrait mode as it is in a landscape mode. And I found this quite fascinating. And look, I haven't watched a huge amount of content there. I watched a couple of episodes of one of their own shows, and that worked quite well in either format. I thought landscape was, for me anyway, was probably slightly better. But they've also got other partnerships with the likes of BBC for news content, Polygon for gaming. So there's a fair chunk of content in there, and you can sign up. I think it's the first 90 days free. So there's not too much of a downside of signing up unless you forget to cancel. So this is one of those subscriptions I signed up for and cancelled immediately, so I wouldn't forget. And I can always rejoin at 90 days if I find myself addicted to lots of their content. What's your thought on this approach to video, Stephen? We got room for another streaming platform, especially one that's maybe a little bit different from the rest?
Yeah, I think the segment that they're targeting is probably somewhat the younger audience. It's not the same sort of content that you're getting on the likes of Netflix. I had a good look at it, and certainly had a look at the Polygon stuff around the e-gaming. They had a really interesting article around Charles Leclerc from F1, and Yeah,
Mm.
from the Formula One. So yeah,
Sorry, what,
that
what was his name again? Charles Le.
Charles Leclerc.
I
I
can
can't
never
pronounce
pronounce it. I can
it.
never pronounce
Yeah,
these guys' names,
yeah.
so I was
It's
just
it's
testing you out.
it's Charles
I
Charles
won't
Leclerc.
try.
Yeah,
I thought it was
yeah.
more Leclerc, but yeah, I'm not very good at getting all these international names right.
Yeah, but yeah, they're running the F1 basically season this year at the moment, in virtual. So yeah,
Yep.
Charles has been actually racing against the other drivers as well as celebrities in a virtual esport sort of world. And this is the
Yeah,
main Formula One drivers.
it's pretty cool, isn't it? I think it's it's neat to see esports sort of getting some some time in the sun, and look, yeah, while people can't get out and traditional sports happen, then why not see how these guys go, doing an esports variation. And look, tell me about Zwift. We've talked about it probably on the show once or twice before. In the past, and it's something that seems to have been growing in popularity. But you've been doing a bit of Zwift riding, is that right?
Yeah. I got back into cycling sort of last year, mostly doing sort of mountain biking, sort of at bike parks and the likes, which are all closed now. So fortunately, I broke my wrist just before Christmas and couldn't get on the bike. So I signed up with Zwift, got myself a smart trainer and all those types of things. So been going hard on that. Yeah, did a 2.5 hour sort of uphill ride the other week, and racing against other people. I won't tell you where I got because it was right at the back. But yeah, but it's certainly the whole feel of riding in a pack basically, and the competitive aspect and all of it sort of really does add another dimension. Otherwise you're just sort of sitting there on a wind trainer basically, looking at pixels. But the gamification is actually really good. It's actually a really good experience, and I can see that happening more and more going forward. They hit new records and all over the last couple of weekends, probably 20% up on their peak year to date, basically, just because of people's stay home stuff at the moment.
Yeah, okay. Now, also on the sort of fitting into that broader gaming world, Google Stadia now offering a free tier, but of course, Google haven't seen fit to offer that in New
Yeah,
Zealand or even Australia as yet. So there might be some technical reasons why not, but we're still out in the cold on that
yeah.
front.
Come on, Google. It's just like the Pixel. We've been left out in the cold.
Yes. All right. Now, on to I guess a quick word on this whole working from home thing. Any big tips from you, Stephen?
Yeah. Certainly, if you can, don't use Wi-Fi. If you can wire up with the Ethernet, certainly sort of go that way. And if you can get yourself on USB, do that. Um, if you can probably get yourself sort of a decent sort of microphone, it's probably going to help as well. Probably some of the key things, but all of the main services like your Microsoft Teams, your Slack, your Zoom, all of those services are really good for actually getting productivity and collaboration sort of working. Um, the difficult thing is obviously sort of segmenting yourself off from the rest of the house. If you've got young kids at home and all, it can be a bit of a challenge. So there's quite a few juggles going on that side. A lot of organizations now overcome that sort of initial panic, and they've managed to get themselves screens and the likes, and keyboards, and managed to get power supplies. But yeah, once you're set up from home, I think you can be pretty productive because you've got no commute time anymore. And you're not actually sort of every once an hour sort of going down to the cafe out for a coffee. So I think productivity might almost be up.
Yep. And I think you're probably onto something there. Though I do have to disagree with the commute thing. I mean, there still is a commute, but it can vary from 5 seconds to maybe 10 or 15 in some in some home environments. So you've got to calculate that in. It's important. You don't want to rush yourself.
Yeah, I think more prep basically for you've got to have maybe documents basically in a sort of more progressed fashion to actually make an online sort of meeting sort of cost effective. I
Mm.
was talking with an insurance company earlier today, and they what they would normally try and address basically in a 1 hour meeting is taking an hour and a half. So there is some losses basically in the productivity once you get a number of people there. And most of that can be overcome just by better preparation for the meeting in terms of the content that you're going over in the agenda.
Yeah. Okay. Good tips. Yeah, no, I think that those are were definitely good ones. And look, there are things that you can do to improve your quality, but definitely be backing up your thoughts around. Yeah, if you're in a location you don't have an ultra fast broadband or a fiber connection yet, then get one. And if you can get a wired connection to your device, that's always going to be best. And if not, then be reviewing how you're set up on Wi-Fi. And I think lots of people are getting issues with just how good their Wi-Fi is or isn't in a particular part of the house that they may be trying to work from. So yeah, if you can't get a wired connection for a wireless access point, then maybe mesh Wi-Fi will help you. Now, I guess onto hearing a little bit about what's been going on in your world, Stephen, with Sumo Logic. And I was having a look at this new video series that Sumo Logic have put out online from Sean Acor. Can you tell us a little bit about that and who might find it interesting?
Yeah, I met Sean earlier in the year, sort of when I was up at Silicon Valley for our sort of annual conference and the likes. And he's a researcher and a best-selling author focused on sort of happiness research. And he's put together some stuff around how the happiness advantage basically can really work in a business's favor. So he's been on TED Talks, did episodes with Oprah and the likes around how you can actually improve how effectively you are for your company and for life in general. And so we went and sponsored a 4-part series and all with them. And if you search YouTube for Sumo Logic Mindset Reset, you'll be able to find that on YouTube. Some of the key things that he actually put together for us is and this is a real short summary if you don't have the half an hour or so to actually go and go through some of those, but some really practical tips, like share 3 things that you're grateful for each day with someone else. So make a point of actually reaching out and actually connecting with somebody and being grateful basically for what they bring to your life and what they bring basically to your business relationship. The second thing was do something altruistic. Reach out to someone who might be in need and do something for them. It's going to actually help your mindset as well as actually help out someone else.
That's so good, isn't it? I mean, some of these things just they make so much sense, but we do need to be reminded. And I think it's not a normal sort of time. So we maybe do need to step back and remind ourselves of some of these simple things.
Yeah, absolutely. The big one for me was his next one was lower the activation energy that it takes for you to do positive actions. So instead of being frustrated that everything's sort of difficult, find some things that you can be really productive with and make it really easy. Get yourself set up so that you can do those positive actions really easily. And likewise, if there are negative actions, make it harder for you to do that. So if you keep getting distracted by watching TV or something like that, go and take the batteries out of the actual remote and move them down to the other end of the house. take the temptation away, and celebrate those small wins. Whenever you're making progress towards a goal, basically celebrate those. So some really great practical things to actually work on there, basically to get yourself more productive and in the right mindset for doing business.
Yeah, that's good. I caught in the chat with Jason Paris from Vodafone. He was talking about some of the learnings from the Vodafone I guess subsidiaries sort of around the world that they're still tapped into, even though they're not not owned as part of the Vodafone group anymore. And he was saying sort of once you get to about the point we are at now in New Zealand, that's when people's energy sort of starts dropping off. To start with, it's a little bit exciting, working from home and so on, and everyone sort of gets used to it. But he was saying by about 3 weeks or so in, people start getting a little bit weary, and so just realigning ourselves and rethinking how we can best handle this time is good.
Yeah. We're really in this with our customers, so we like to do everything we can to actually make remote business basically as good as we can.
So I want to hear you were telling me last week when we were having a bit of a chat around this remote work observability service. What is that all about?
Yeah, so with organizations, workforces having to work from home, there's a whole lot of challenges, other than the technical challenges of actually getting up on a video conference service and the likes, or a collaboration service. There's other things that you need to assist with. So we've got a free 90-day sort of work from home remote observability service. You can just go to our website, sort of sumologic.com, and take that up. No obligation. It's just a service to actually help your staff basically work more remotely. And the types of things that it does is actually helps identify who are the people in your workforce that are actually struggling, who is having sort of Zoom sessions that are dropping off, or Slack sessions that are dropping off, or MS Teams sessions that are not quite working as expected, so that then you can actually go and proactively remediate some of those situations and all for them, if possible. Also, if they're having trouble with authenticating and passwords and all those types of things, providing the insights into the technology support organization who is helping your workers do that, be able to actually do their job better, so that there's better customer experience. The other aspect of that is, are some people actually engaging in risky things? Are they sharing information or files or things that they shouldn't be doing? So having some visibility of those types of aspects as well, because some of these platforms, as you said before, Zoom struggling with some of the security aspects. You need to actually be looking at this a little bit more closely when you're in a work from home scenario.
Yeah.
One other aspect is, how are your workforce engaging sort of across the day? And it's not meant to be Big Brother, but it's what time do you need to be there basically to support your workforce? Are they engaging earlier and finishing earlier, or those types of things? So being able to get visibility into how people basically are sort of interacting with your work services sort of across the day. And that's really what it's about, to help mitigate some of the risks of having remote users, but also to actually optimize the customer experience that your workers are getting while they're working from home.
Excellent. Oh, well, that's good. Very, very helpful. And I guess nobody can complain when you're offering it as a 90-day free service. So that's cool.
Yeah, and we're there to help.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. So, thank you to everybody who's listened in to this episode, and those that have also jumped on our live streams, because we have been streaming across. We've got our new channel on YouTube. If you look up NZ Tech Podcast on there, We have a handful of our listeners who are now, subscribed to our YouTube channel. We're also there today. We've streamed this episode on Periscope, so you're welcome to follow us there on Periscope, which is part of Twitter, of course, and we're on Facebook. So look, we appreciate likes and comments and subscribes and all those sorts of things through the official channels. And as I think I've mentioned previously, we're also on LinkedIn now. We're not doing a live stream through LinkedIn just yet, but you can find NZ Tech Podcast there on LinkedIn. And of course, for all of our shows, you can track those down at www.podcasts.nz. We've got shows such as the New Zealand Everyday Investor, and now's probably a time where people are going to be thinking a little bit about their investments, whether it's KiwiSaver or otherwise. So maybe a good time to go and subscribe to the New Zealand Everyday Investor. And one of our newest shows is online and is online now. And that is called This Climate Business with award-winning journalist Vincent Heringer. So that's another new one worth checking out. And of course, some amazing episodes of the New Zealand Business Podcast, and a bunch of those are focused on the technology world. So thank you to everyone for joining in this episode, and we will look forward to catching you back on the New Zealand Tech Podcast again next week, if not before, with some extra content possibly flowing through. So thanks everyone. Thank you to Stephen Phillips for joining the show. Great to catch up again, Stephen. Great to have you on the show. And look, special thank you to your firm, Sumo Logic, for their support of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. That's what helps keep us going, and also to our other show partners. So it's because of the firms that get behind the show. We've got HP, Vodafone, Spark, Vocus, and Samsung also, who are standing behind the New Zealand Tech Podcast, supporting us and the tech community and ecosystems here in New Zealand. So huge thank you for all of that support. All right, well, that's us. We'll catch you again next week. See ya.